Hi everyone, my name is Carlos Mendoza and I'll be doing a presentation on crime and media. My reaction. So my reaction to this segment of what we're studying right now in Deviance and Social Control, especially reading about how social media has really brought on this bias we have towards other people, is really it's shameful. It's a shame on our society. As quoted from Master Lipinski, Kopax, and Bam Morovitz, research on stereotyping in the United States reveals persistent racial prejudice among whites, particularly regarding the characterization of blacks as violent and aggressive. Now, we've seen this way back in the day in the opposite way, where we looked at Black Americans as being savages, as being oversexed, we saw them as portrayed as, comical. They were there for entertainment. We saw a lot of that in blackface. And it just really goes to show you our ignorance has not changed today. Again, we are still applying stereotypes to a group of people that we marginalize on a day-to-day basis. So let me tell you, ignorance is not always bliss. My beliefs. Imagery is very powerful. According to Carpenter, the imagery of how we view women in the most negative light would be the image of the crack mother. Now, I find this very sad and disturbing that we as a society today, we think automatically the lowest of lows of a woman would be a person of color, which I find very repulsive. That we have to think that. Why do we think that? Those are questions we need to ask. What has been instilled in us for us to come to this conclusion to associate a person, an image, to be a person of color? Something to think about. So I feel my beliefs is that imagery is very powerful, and within social media, this is being taken advantage of. That we see certain kinds of people being arrested, people of color being arrested and given it to us in a negative light. As I mentioned earlier, what we have is stereotypes from the past where our stereotypes have done nothing but gotten worse. We have not as a society been able to improve on them. I feel there's strides to improve, but they're nowhere conquering to where the image is at right now. So I think as a society really need to sit down and really work on this. Stereotypes. Another interesting fact I find very intriguing. According to Grabe and Drew, they talk about cultivation hypothesis in their article, Crime Cultivation Comparisons Across Media Genres and Channels. They stated and quoted, the core idea that people who are avid media consumers tend to adopt worldviews similar to those presented in mass media content. Now, overlapping theme we're seeing here on each one of my slides is the influence we have through media. And what you're seeing here is that people are beginning to get brainwashed in this way of thinking of a certain way, of viewing people a certain way. And again, it goes back to stereotypes that apply to this. Language applies to this. We see labels applying to this, which again, I'll talk a little bit later into this slide. And the idea is that why we as a society are presenting this to the general public, because what it's doing, it's embedding in the minds of us. It is basically, it's causing us to create these stereotypes where we're now associating this action with this type of person, which we shouldn't. We are all unique. We all operate in different ways. A generality is the same thing as a stereotype. When we say, for instance, and no offense to anybody, as been said in the past, all Asians are good at math. Even though it sounds as a compliment, it's still a stereotype. When we say Mexicans are great workers or great laborers, again, that's a stereotype. We need to stay away from that. And the thing is, mass media today, they capitalize on that and they build on that. When you watch videos, when you watch movies, you see these stereotypes being played out. You see the gardener as being Mexican. You see the smart person in class doing math as Asian. Again, society, we need to wake up and we need to change on how we view and how we represent ourselves in media. The relativity of deviance. So going back to the text in which was required for us to read for this course, written by John Cura, Relativity of Deviance, he talks about how people are exposed to violence at a young age and therefore will be prone to it. He calls this violentization. And as a result of no longer wanting to be victimized, they will now use what was used on them. So it kind of to me sounds like it's going to be connecting, which later on I'll talk about, differential association. And that's what I really feel like the violentization here goes hand in hand with, is that again, people are being exposed to certain behaviors that they will be prone to repeat later on in life. And this causes a cycle, and it causes a group or a culture to continue to be caught in this cycle altogether, which causes stereotypes and links back to that. Theory. So we get to my favorite part of this assignment, which we get to apply theory to what is taught and learned in this course. So I chose symbolic interactionism to help with the explanation of what's going on with this crime section. So of symbolic interactionism, we have labeling theory and differential association. Labeling theory is basically putting a label on someone and basically telling them what they are. And then they start to believe that. If you tell somebody they're worth nothing or they'll never amount to something, they start to incorporate that and they start to believe that. Now, differential association, as the word talks about associations, those that associate with a certain behavior around them. So someone that's associated with a bunch of violence around them, for example, they're in a neighborhood where they see violence on a daily basis. They see people having to do what they need to do in order to get the things they need, and they amount to violence to get it. They're going to accept violence as a norm. And so therefore, they will then embrace it, and then they will become that violent person as well. So both theories, I think, are really well for this section to applying to stereotypes in mass media. Because what we're going to do in mass media, we're going to start labeling people. We're going to start calling people names. Or we're going to see a group of people that in their group that maybe the way they live, like in a urban town, a norm for them is the way they dress. But again, we're going to judge them. We're going to place judgment on them, and we're going to start giving them labels. So I feel like us as a society, we need to stop with this negative labeling. If we're going to label, let's get some positiveness going on. Let's start embracing positiveness and start encouraging people rather than discouraging. References.